Hello, welcome to another episode of the series Marlene Nobre 2026. It is a pleasure to be with you all on this Sunday, first Sunday of May. And today we have here with us two guest speakers. So we have our dear friend Roberto Watanabe. Hello, Roberto.
Hello, Munir. Hello, everybody.
And we also have our dear friend Guilherme Dias with us. Hello, Guilherme.
Hi, Munir, Roberto, everyone. Nice to be here.
So, as you all know, today both will be talking about the book Obsession and Its Masks by Dr. Marlene Nobre. It is a very interesting subject and, of course, very interesting book as well. So, we have two guest speakers, so the subject will be covered in full. Let me just quickly introduce, I'll start with Roberto. So, for those who don't know Roberto, I think you are from São Paulo, yes, Roberto?
Yes.
Yeah, São Paulo, Brazil. He's got a bachelor's degree in philosophy and also a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's degree in business administration as well. And within the Spiritist area, he, is the president of FESP, Board of Directors, president of FESP from 2019 to 2021 and also 2022 to 2024. Director of Continued Education courses from 2026 to 2018 and Director of Spiritist Philosophy course 2013 to 2015. And also a writer at the SOA magazine from the Spiritist Federation of the State of São Paulo. And our dear friend Guilherme Dias. Guilherme is from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and he works with underwater robotics in Brazil and abroad. He's been doing that for 34 years now, and lived in France, Scotland, Dubai, and England. Guilherme is currently living in England, and he was born in a Spiritist family, and since the age of 15, he participates in mediumistic meetings and gives Spiritist lectures. So he was the president, vice president, and the one responsible for teaching at the Spiritist Center Dr. Antero Manhães. That was from 2012 to 2023. And he's also a pioneer in the organizing of and methodical coordination of virtual mediumistic meetings with participants from all over the world. He conducts lectures and studies and is a member of the Spiritist Society of London and the Department for Teaching of the British Union of Spiritist Societies. He is part of the team coordinating a online study group in mediumship at BUS, the British Union of Spiritist Societies, and he coordinates the PEPI. PEPI is a research project on ectoplasm, perispirits, and epigenetics. So these are just brief words to introduce our guest speakers of today. And so let's start with Roberto. I'll bring your presentation to share with our audience here. So Roberto will be talking to us, and when he finishes, Guilherme will also bring us his presentation, and then we have time to answer the questions or discuss some comments and some key points of both presentations. So I thank you all once again to be with us here, and let's enjoy our time with both guest speakers. So I'll hand it over to you, Roberto. We'll be backstage, and as soon as we finish, we'll come back.
Okay, Munir, thank you. Hello, everybody again. Glad to be here again this year to talk about Dr. Marlene Nobre, and we are in its masks. I don't know if everybody knows, but the spirit André Luiz He wrote, actually, he dictated a series of books entitled Life in the Spirit World. Each book has a title, but the general title was Life in the Spirit World. And like the name says, the goal was to show how is life in the spirit world. And Dr. Marlene Nobre, uh, she was a physician, as you already know, and she dedicated several decades studying such series of books, about 16 books. And she dedicated especially to the part related to obsessions, because obsessions is a very serious problem today. She writes in the book, right, that obsession has been underestimated in the world, and as it is underestimated, it makes victims and causing increasing crimes and varied diseases, because people do such kind of actions, suffer such kind of illnesses, and doesn't know uh, the how well the influence that they are suffering, right, and regarding these actions and problems. And hence, she says the importance of a better understanding of such subject of obsession. And for that purpose, she wrote this book, Obsession and Its Mask. Well, this series of books was dictated by the Spirit André Luiz. He was also a physician when he was incarnated in Rio de Janeiro, the same land as from Guilherme, who is talking after me. And he dictated those books to the mediumship of Chico Xavier, the most famous medium here in Brazil, and also another important medium, which is who is Valdo Vieira. Uh, well, I will just here take an overview of what obsession is. Guilherme is going to explain in more detail. And obsession basically is the domination of an spirit, an inferior spirit, a low order spirit, and such the dominance that such spirits manage to acquire over certain people, which are we as mediums, right? Because as we know from the study of spiritism, we are all mediums. And there are three main types of obsessions. The first one is simple obsession, where the creature or we are pursued by a specific spirit from which we cannot untangle ourselves, right? So it's a kind of, let's say, a disturbing influence from a spirit um, upon our thought, for example, or emotions. Fascination, the second type, is a kind of illusion produced by the action of the spirit on the mind of the medium and paralyzes his or her reasoning, right? For example, the medium believes that all the messages that the communication that he or she receives from the spirit is true, even when the message doesn't make any sense, right? And the third one is subjugation, when we have a more advanced degree of obsession, like Marlene says, and Allan Kardec also teaches us about that in the Book of a Medium, right? The Medium's book. And such subjugation can be, there are mainly two types, right? Physical subjugation and moral subjugation. And when we have a more serious case, we may get close to possession. So that's just to have a brief overview, right, of what obsession is. The obsession may be classified into two species: in physical effects, like, for example, rapid movement of objects, and also an intellectual effects, which is normally communication from the spirits, either, for example, from psychophony, when it is about the talking medium, right? When the spirit talks about through the medium, and the psychography, for example, which was the case of Chico Xavier, where the medium writes, right? Or the spirit dictates and the medium writes books, for example, letters or whatever, right? And also this is one type of classification, physical and intellectual, because one is a kind of a material phenomena, and another is a kind of a intellectual phenomena. And we need also to distinguish between what we call the anemic phenomena and mediumistic phenomena. Anemic phenomena is when the message, for example, in a case of intellectual phenomena, the message or the communication comes from the medium itself, right? Actually, from the, let's say, from the deep memory from the medium. And the mediumistic is when the message is from a discarnate spirit, right? So that is the two main differences. And we are going to, Dr. Marlene in this book, she separated the phenomena that we are going to study between the anemic phenomena, which is those phenomena from the medium itself, and mediumistic phenomena, when we have here the influence of a discarnate spirit. Although even in the case of an anemic phenomena, the medium may manifest his or her own message, but we also may have the influence of a discarnate spirit, as we are going to see in some examples here. Okay, so and then for the anemic phenomena, Dr. Marlene, separated between the physical effects and intellectual effects, and also in mediumistic phenomena, she did the same, right? So let's start by studying the anemic phenomena. Here, I'm going just to read, right, the kind of obsessions that we are going to study in this book. So, as I said, she classified in the obsession in of those of an anemic nature and those of a mediumistic nature. From the anemic nature, she classified in intelligent facts, which is in this case is telepathic obsession, auto-obsession, where the medium obsessed himself, right, or herself, crystallized the ancient personality when a memory of a past life, for example, emerged in the conscience of the medium, and or in the subconscious of the medium, and shared the possession. Cases of vice, for example, right, partners in addiction, vice or addiction, and also the physical effects. It's case of a poltergeist, right? When the medium, by his own, let's say, faculty, has the capacity to move objects, for example, right? So this is the obsession of an anemic nature. And then we have the obsession of a mediumistic nature. Here we have the influence of a discarnate spirit. And then we have, again, the classification between the intelligent facts. We'll see cases of symbiosis in diverse degrees, mental parasitosis or spiritual vampirism, tuning between the medium and the discarnate spirit, right? And here we have the prevalence of hypnotic mechanism, sound and thought, allergic process. And then we also have the physical effects, cases of a poltergeist, this time not from the medium, right, but from provoked by a discarnated spirit. That's why it's classified in the mediumistic nature. So let's start then. We're going to study the anemic in nature, obsession of anemic nature, and then after that, mediumistic nature, right? Me and Guiherme will share the presentation with all these cases of obsessions here. Starting by the obsessions of anemic nature, right? What is an anemic phenomenon, right? Just to detail a little bit more here. Are those produced by the soul of the incarnate man, the medium, him or herself, right? And are basically of three types. For example, we may have those phenomena involving psychic effects, right? Telepathy, would be a kind of a mental communication between two incarnate people, or we have impressions transmitted at a distance. always involving incarnate people, right? Person. And the second, we have those phenomena, anemic phenomena of physical effects, when the medium by itself can move an object, for example, right? Let's say can move a pen, for example, on the table from one place to another, right? And third, we have those phenomena that determine the appearance of the image of the medium. So is what we called the appearance of a double, right? When the medium is in one place and he appear in another place, right? And such another place could be another country, for example, and at the other side of the world, for example, right? Because what appeared there is not it's his or her physical body, but is his or her perispirit, right? Spiritual body. And then this is the third kind of anemic phenomena. But we are going to talk today about obsession, right? So those kind of manifestations that involve such issue of obsession. And the first one that we are going to study is this telepathic obsession. So would be like I said, right, the influence of one incarnate person upon another incarnate person. The influence of the person would be the medium. And here, basically, is the negative influence between incarnate people. Dr. Marlene said, right, that the negative influence between incarnated people is much more than we can imagine, right? And which is the case of a telepathic obsession provoked by living people, right? So, one upon another. But here, she says, the spirit also, right? Inferior spirit, often enemies from past lives, they can aggravate such a pathological condition, right? When we call the telepathic obsession, is not a simple mental communication between two living persons, but is a harming kind of communication, right? That's why it's called the obsession. In such situation, they could be, probably could be, for example, enemies, right? But these could be aggravated by a third part, which would be the spirits, which also are enemy of the influence of the person, right? And then aggravate such a situation. And then the obsessed, the incarnate, which is the medium in this case, is a strong candidate for madness, and also only active fraternity, right, would be the most effective remedy to such a situation. So we are going I'm going here to describe what is this kind of obsession. Then I will give an example that Dr. Marlene extracted from one of those books, right, from Angela Luis. So let's see the first case here from the books of Angela Luis regarding telepathic obsession. So is this the case of this woman, Anisia, and her husband, Jovino. And it is in the book In the Realms of Mediumship. So this is a case where Jovino, the husband, he lived under a strange fascination of another woman, right? So he seemed entirely disinterested in his family, right? Wife and daughters. And one day, having finished a meal, Angela Luis tells us, Jovino was reading the evening newspaper, and suddenly he received a kind of a telepathic influence. An image of a woman appeared before him, which was the woman he was fascinated, right? And then claiming urgent business commitment, he tells Anisia that he must leave, and he left home, right? And Anisia, the humiliated wife, she starts to weep silently, and then at that moment, the same figure of a woman presented to herself to her. When we call present to her, could be kind of let's say an image that she see either mentally or she sees like someone which was in front of her, right? And then she began to emit stormly thoughts, Andrea Luis says, right? Andrea Luis is the author, right? And accusing the woman of a perversity and disturbing her home and so on and so forth, right? And so what Andrea Luis commented here is that the telepathic domination from that woman was not upon the husband, Jovino, but extended it also to the wife, Anisia. And he says why? Right? Because of the regime of mutual influence in which the husband and wife live, right? So that's the first case here of a telepathic domination, right? Is only one of that harm the people which is being influenced. Second case is auto-obsession, right? Is when the person obsesses him or herself, right? In this case, Dr. Marlene comments that as our actions are the fruit of our ideas or of our deeds, we generate happiness or misfortune for ourselves, right? And then in this case, the incarnate, in this case, the medium, can be pursued by him or herself, right? Due to their mistaken actions of the past. So this is the situation here. And it can also occur due to mental creations, as would be the case, she says, of a writer tormented by for example, if it's a man, tormented by his deleterious works, right? And to exit such situation, only an extreme modification toward the good is the solution, right? So let's see a case here, right, of auto-obsession. We have here the case of the police investigator from the book Liberation, another book from Jean Louis, right, from that series, Life in the Spirit World. Such man here, he was a police investigator. He abused of his position to humiliate and wound and attracted the wrath of many people, and also the company of evil entities, right? Because whenever we are going such kind of evil deeds, we attract the company of a low order spirit. But he did that with no kind of a sense of guilt, right? But having reached old age, and Andrea Luis says, remorse opened a large fracture in the fortress in which he had entrenched himself, right? And then his mind in delirium broken down his physical body, and he was heading toward a fatal cirrhosis, right? Which is kind of a serious illness in the liver, right? And then deep down, he is pursued by himself uh, because he was tormented by what he did in the past and by what he has been, right? Such a cruel person. And then Andrea Luis commented here, right? Memory is a living disk, right? Whatever we say, whatever we do, whatever we think is let's say archived in our memory, right? And through it we are condemned or acquitted within ourselves. So here we have a kind of auto-obsession, right? Because the person is suffering here because of his own evil deeds from the past, right? His conscience is acting here on when he reaches old age. So this is second case of this also is a anemic phenomenon of an anemic nature, right? Because it's from the medium himself. Let's see a third situation here. Crystallized ancient personality, where the situation where the person, well, let's say, an experience from a past life emerges in his subconscious, right? And then Dr. Marlene commented here that mental crystallization around a painful episode from the remote past can overcome the biological shock of a rebirth. So that situation here. And a relevant fact, such as the presence of a discarnate enemy from that past life, can awaken the memory and provoke a nervous crisis, which is one case that we are going to see. And this process of emergence of the previous personality occurs through a phenomenon of auto-hypnosis, like it's like the person hypnoses himself, right, or herself. And in this case, the person needs to be supported to enter the field of intimate renewal, right? The only solid basis for their recovery. So she is commenting the problem here, and she also give a direction to solve that problem, right? Which is normally the last sentence here. And let's see a case of a lady X here, which is in the book In the Realms of the Mediumship. So in the spiritist session, a lady which was there fell into convulsive weeping, Andrali says, right? And spoke of a blade buried in her flesh, right? A blade buried in her flesh. So she cried out against a man who had ruined her destiny, and it was not a medium for mediumship because there was a discarnate spirit which was crying through her as a medium, but it was her that was, let's say, memorying such a bad bad experience right from the past. But there was, Anjali says, a discarnated man observing her with inexpressible dismay, he said, right? So he was the trigger, right, provoked the emergence of such a bad experience from the past. And the approach of him awakened her painful experience that occurred in a city of the old world, which was in Europe, and some city from Europe in a previous century, 19th century in this case, right? The book was written in the 20th century. And it was an anemic process because it was the lady, she did not incarnate an entity, right, as a medium, but it exteriorized her inner world, right, her deep memory. The last one here of anemic phenomena is the kind of the shared possession, that we said, right? A partner in addiction. Right? And in most cases, of addictees, alcohol or smoking or drugs, right? Whatever, the responsibility of the incarnate spirit is very great. Right? He says there are cases where the predominance of the incarnate is frank and unequivocal, and others where responsibility between the medium and the spirits are shared, right? And is shared. And often, spiritual benefactors arrange illnesses or temporary impediments to call the attention of the incarnate, right? But sometimes there are cases, Jeremy says, that where the separation of partners is discouraged because we have a case, for example, of consented partnership, right? The incarnate wants that kind of a partnership. So only time will resolve the problem, right? And unfortunately, only time in which we will be full of suffering here. Let's see a case here from the book Sex and Destiny, right? The case of this man, Claudio Nogueira. So he's a mature man, and he was there in his home, reading a newspaper, looking for malicious news, holding a cigarette in his finger, and suddenly two unhappy discarnates appeared, right? Appeared, and touched his shoulder and shouted, right? To drink, my dear, I want to drink, right? So then Claudio turned away from the article, and then he feels thirst for alcohol, right? It is articulated in his idea. Then one of them, and then he looks for the drink, right? And then one of those discarnates merged with him, and the two integrally incorporated. Go to get the bottle for drink, right? And then when he drinks let's say the alcohol, then Andrea Luis said, right, the gulp rolled through the throat, and both drug addicted, incarnate and discarnate, were here, clicked their tongues, right, with the pleasure in simultaneous action. Then after that, the second they also want, and then Claudio repeated the drinking, right? So that's the case here, where there is a kind of at least natural partnership here, right? So, but it is indicated as a case of a phenomenon of anemic nature, because the main, let's say, the main character here is the incarnate person, right? It's Claudio himself. So this was the four cases of anemic phenomena of anemic nature, obsessions of anemic nature, and then let's now see some obsessions of a mediumistic nature, right? Like we said, is caused by a discarnate spirit, right? Entity. And I'm going to describe some of those, and then Guilherme will describe another, right? So we have this kind of a symbiosis in diverse degrees. Symbiosis Dr. Marlene writes, is a common process in the lower kingdoms and in the human organism, right? For example, in our organism, we have bacteria, right, in our intestines. And these bacteria, as they are very important in our digestion process and assimilation of the nutrients from the food, right, that we eat. And at the same time, those bacteria find in our intestine their food also, right? So this is a kind of symbiosis, right? When two kind of living beings live together, right? And benefiting, mutually benefiting. So that basically is what is symbiosis here, right? So, but we also have the spiritual symbiosis, right? For example, the case that we just saw, right, between Claudio and those in discarnate, is a kind of a temporary symbiosis, right, between the incarnate and discarnate. And in this case, in case of spiritual symbiosis, the incarnates submit themselves to the control of the discarnate, right? Who, in exchange, protected the incarnate from against the assault of hidden influence of another spirit, right? And there is also the case of the discarnate entities who, separate from those they love the most by the process of death, they remain fluidly linked to his family, right? So it's a case that we are going to see here from the book Missionaries of the Light, right? The case of Esther and her family. So here we have a picture like this, right? The family consisting of a widow, which is Esther, right? Three children and an elderly couple remained at the meal table during a simple lunch, right? They were having lunch. Then, but six entities involved in dark circles fed themselves by the absorption system. So the family was there having lunch, and there was another part of them was more six entities, right? Discarnate spirits, which was were in the past, when they were alive, they were part of that family. And they found their recess in the cooked and absorbed substances the same flavor they appreciated when they were in the body, when they were alive, right? So having this carnity in conditions of excessive attachment to the family, where they found in the family the same shackle, right? So what Andrea Luiz is explaining here is that those six entity was attached to the family, but the family also was attached to them, right? So that's why he said that in the same shackle, right? And this occurs until the incarnate, through edifying study and lived virtues, offer them, the discarnate entities, the opportunity for healthy reflection, right? So this is a case of from this book, Missionaries of the Light. Let's see a third situation here, mental parasitosis or spiritual vampirism, right? So vampirism, we have an idea of sucking, someone sucking the energy from another, right? So every form of vampirism is linked to an idle mind, which surrenders to the inferior suggestions that exploit it, right? So by action of the obsessor, the vampire in this case, the magnetic fluid pours into the mental field of the patient, the medium in this case, right? Who obeys their command, his command. And then the obsessor sucks the energies of the patient, right, and dominates their motor and sensory zones, like an artist who controls the keys of a piano, right? Andrea Luiz says. And then it creates thus disease of all types, right, from mental disorders like neurasthenia or madness, or physical disorders, right, physiological disorders like gastric disturbance or motor aphasia, right, when the person has disturbance in language, right. So that is mental parasitosis. Let's see a case here. This case about the anemic young woman, right, in the book Liberation. So we have a situation here where a disturbed young woman, accompanied by her grandmother, goes to a spiritual consultation in the spirit center, right? So, um, and they are followed by two entities, two discarnate entities, and then the patient laughed without purpose, said nonsense, referred to revenge projects in full idiocy and unconsciousness, right? She was out of her mind, right? So, and there were tenuous threads of magnetic energy linking her brain to the head of one of the entities, which was controlling her, right? So through such a linking, right? So linking threads. So then what happened? In a past life, she married a man and seduced his brother, right? So the first committed suicide and the second ended up mad, right? So this wasn't a past life, right? And today, in her present incarnation, the two entities were there at her side to realize it, right? So this is a kind of this what I call a mental parasitosis, right, or spiritual vampirism. They are there making her suffering, right, for her evil deeds from the past. We have also the fluidic infections, which are another kind of obsession of a mediumistic nature, right? So here, Angela Luis comments, and Dr. Marlene writes that just as organic infections exist, there are also fluidic infections, right? When vengeful discarnates instill monstrous mental forms in the mind of their incarnate adversaries, right? And such forms are called fluidic infections. Other entities act as ectoparasites, absorbing the emanation of the incarnates who are in tune with them. It's kind of a vampirism here, right? And then there are also endoparasites, which ectoparasites act from outside, right? And endoparasites act from inside, let's say, the body of the incarnate person. And there they secrete substances with the property of modifying the thought of incarnates, right? So let's see a case here of an endoparasite from the book In the Greater World. Is this case of a boy in the rescue body. So in a certain home, Anjali says, a very sick boy lay in bed surrounded by two unhappy entities. And 2 centuries ago, he, the boy, as a man of course, had decreed the death of many compatriots in a civil insurrection, and countless victims had already forgiven his crime. But the two which was there and now surrounding him did not forgive, right? And was accompanying him. And then, as we said, one of the executioners touches his brain, and then a dark substance reaches the little one's brain, the boy's brain, accentuated his impression of a terror, right? So this is an example the fluidic infection here, right? Uh, and then for the solution of the case, Dr. Marlene comments, the two executioners would be reborn as brothers of the boy, right? To replace affection, to replace the hatred from the past with affection now, right? Love now in the present incarnation. So this is the third case, and then let's see here the last case here, the mental fixation was what is mental fixation? Is the adherence of a thought to an object, being, a person or living being or thing, which prevents the thought normal flow, right? And then in this case, this from the part of a spirit, right? And could be also be from the part of an incarnate person. The spirit here is not interested in another subject, right? He's concentrating on such an object, and so she, is what he or the only thing that he thinks about, right? So in this case, passion, Andrelli says, passion or discouragement, cruelty or revenge, jealousy or despair can immobilize us indefinitely, right? When we are under such a let's say, thinking, right? And only, and then Dr. Marlene comments here, right? Only the struggles in the flesh, by incarnating, the process, will the process uh, be where we have the possibility of a cure such situation, right? So let's see a case here from the book Action and Reaction. It's the case of this man, Antonio Olimpio, and his son Luis, right? So here we have the case that after the father's death, Antonio Limpio, this was he was forced to share the large farm with his two younger brothers, Clarino and Leonel. All of this happened in a past life, right? So, and then to keep everything, he did not want to share, right? The let's say or the farm with his brother. So to keep everything to himself, he projects and executes there on the past life the death of the brothers, and later bequeathing the property to his son Luis. Right? Here now in the present, he left to his son Luis, Luis, his son Luis is presently incarnated. And after that, his man Antonio Limpio begins to suffer the torment imposed by the vengeful brothers there on the spiritual realm, and who also instilled in Luis, the son, who is incarnate, a taste for avarice. Right. So this is a kind of he is provoking the son Antonio Limpio's son Luis, this mental fixation and avarice. Right. So nurturing his mental fixation, André says, they acted so that Luis, the son, would not forget to preserve the fortune that they thought belonged to them. So it's very interesting here because the two guys are discarnate, but are still attached to the fortune that remained here on earth, right? And which now is in the hand of Luis, the son of Antonio Limpio. So this is a case of the last case that we would have to present today. And now we are going to see what the second, the other part of the book that will be presented by Guiherme. So thank you for having me. Munir?
Hello, Roberto. Thank you so much for the beautiful presentation. Just to explain, you mentioned that the book is divided into two parts. You covered part one, and it's interesting to see how many aspects obsession has. You see, it could be anemic and spiritual, we could say, and so many nuances related to to the topic. So, this is just a startup for those interested in studying in greater detail the topic obsession. It's really, really fascinating and also rich in terms of different aspects, and the nuances regarding this phenomenon.
Yeah, and there are more to be presented by Guilherme.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you. I don't know if Guilherme wants to add something before we go to part two now.
I think that every example that was given by Roberto is full of possibilities to us
Yeah.
to understand, to learn. And I'm pretty sure that every spirit center have a lot of examples themselves. It's always good to remember examples that were given by Marlene, because I think that she and Andrea Louise, they did a very good job, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we start, Guilherme, I just want to say hello to Anne-Marie Cardozo, Buzz Audiovisual, our dear friend Elsa, Anna Souls, Erica Gomez. Let me see here who else. Ivani Celeste, Spiritisme en Français. We also have the Allan Kardec group in Crete, Greece. Kalispera to our friends there. I think it's Maria Fernanda Marcos. And also Nebo for you from Russia, I believe. So we thank you all for being here with us, for giving us your comments. So we welcome you all here. So let's go now to Guilherme's presentation. So Guilherme, we hand it over to you.
Well, thank you, Munir. Thank you,
Yeah,
Roberto.
whenever you want me to, move the slides,
Can I
just let
move
me know.
myself this slide?
You can try, see if you can. If you have the arrows on the screen, yeah, you'll be able to do it yourself.
No, I don't see an arrow.
No?
No. We had an arrow when Roberto was presenting, but I don't have the
Yeah.
arrows. Okay, so I need to
Okay.
abuse your patience, Munir.
No problem. I'll be
Okay.
here, watching.
Okay. So if you can go to the next slide, please.
Yes, that's good.
Telling a bit how I end up here with you guys. There was an invitation from Elsa, and I did not know the book before. I knew André Luiz's works, but not this particular book. Book had to come from Brazil, and there was an amazing opportunity. And if you see the book here, that's a real plenty of possibilities to study and to learn. So it is an amazing book. I strongly advocate that spiritists, they should study the subject, obsession. I've tried to find this book in English and I could not. So to those that really are into it, I think we're gonna need to rely a bit on Google Translator and things like that. But I believe that for a spiritist, study the subject is very important as a routine. If we start to talk about mediums and advisors, indoctrinators, or however you want to call them, it becomes a must because it is part of almost our day-to-day activities in the Spiritist group. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Well, before we go to the chapters, I would like to make a quick introduction, if you will. And I would like to make clear that we are surrounded by spirits 24/7, if we like or not. We are surrounded by them. And we are under spiritual influences all the time. If you can go to the next slide, please. I did try to make a compile slide to present the main topics of an obsession, that is how it starts, common signs, what the obsessor seeks, protection, and how to get free from this, And I'm not going into this. I'm trying to be brief, be concerned about time. But this slide gives you a good idea of how things progress in the process. But just a little thought, how it happens with us, happens with our syntony to the process. And then we're going to speak a little bit about that in the next slide as well. Can I move on, Munia, please? It's also very important to understand the whole process of obsession, how it works, how we can go deeper, how can we become some diseases, like things like that. It is important to have an idea, at least, of the perispirit. I'm not going to that in depth in the perispirit. This is not the objective of our meeting today, but it's good to know that the perispirit is what is the go-between, if I may say like that, between our physical body and our spirit itself. So the human being is composed of three elements: the spirit, what we really are, our conscious thinking principle, the physical body, and the intermediate structure that we call perispirit. I'm not going in depth in all that is here. Eventually, if you guys want to see that slide, probably going to be able to see that on YouTube or any media that will be presented by Cardiac Radio and Bus. But it's just to give some thoughts for the people that may join the call with they are not very familiar with the subject. So we can move on, Munia, please. So, obsession is a topic that, as I said initially, is very important to me because it's part of our day-to-day. And why do I think it is important? Because a lot of people come to us on the Spirit Center asking for help. I was able to see several situations, several cases, and without being prepared to deal with that, I think we'll be limited in how we can help. So study the subject is a must, as I said a few minutes ago. Understanding the possibilities and how we can help is also very important. So the main topics I can see are obsession can affect our spiritual body, our mind, and our physical body. Can go that far, can affect our physical body. It mainly arises from mental affinity, tuning, that was already mentioned by Roberto, and we're going to speak a little bit later again. And past connections, meaning that we have created some events in our past, in this life or previous lives, they are coming to an adjustment, and that's what we call the obsession today. It can lead to illness and psychological disturbances. And when we hear like that, say, well, but you sure? I say, yes. If any of you decide to do a research, go in depth in the subject, you will see there are universities studying the subject, and even some hospitals. They are start to make a catalog about what is going on with the patients that they can identify straight away the causes, and they start to relate to it. Healing. It's a good and positive topic, because if we talk about healing, means that we can get rid of it, we can get better, we can improve ourselves, or we can help to improve others. And this is through transformation, mental discipline, and love, and forgiveness. Next one, please, Munia. Now I'm going to try to go in depth, a little bit more in depth into the chapters that we are continuing. And something that came to my mind now is that it seems to be easy to talk about this book because it is very, very interesting. But in the same time, it becomes difficult because every chapter, we could stay here speaking about hours. We could have a lecture for each separate chapter. So to condensate all of this in the time we have today is not an easy task, and I hope that we'll be able to bring at least the essence to you guys, so you can feel the urge to look into the book, to go into the subject, to start to do your own research about the subject. On the chapter 11, pathologies of the spiritual body, perispirit. Marlene brings to us a few things, and here we capture some of the items she brings to us. One of them is the modern monotheism, that is the fixed thought about something, about someone, about ourselves. It can cause spiritual alterations. What are you talking about? There is a process that we call ovoidism, that the spirit start to have a similar process as an atrophy of the members, the limbs, and start to regress the form to a point that becomes like an ovoid, like a ball, like. And this is happening through few processes. We are not going in depth about this process, but the process is related to monotheism, a fixed thought about something, and can be a process related to hypnotism, magnetism, and monotheism. When those three are together, it can lead to that situation on our spiritual body, right? The perispirits can reflect two things: negative thoughts and positive or elevated thoughts. And something that I like to say is that we have the power, each one of us, to decide how we want to be, how we want to create positive or negative thoughts, knowing that negative thoughts create deformation. Deformation can go into pathologies, can go into psychological problems, can go even to the deformation as we highlighted here. On the other hand, positive thoughts create harmony. Harmony in the essence of the world is what? Beauty. Positive thoughts, calm. And that reflects in our spiritual body. There are several spiritual pathologies. And again, I'm not going too deep into the subject, but I want to mention here some of the zoanthropy, specifically zoanthropy and lycanthropy. Lycanthropy is when the spirit starts to be deformed to the point they assume a form of a wolf. And people may think, oh dear, this is scary, or this is something for cuckoo land. I respect every point of opinion, every point of view, but this is something that the spiritists are familiar with. This is something that people that are familiar with, that is obsession work in the spiritist center, at least once in their lives, they have encountered it normally. Basically, it's the same process as we mentioned before, through monotheism, magnetism, and some spirits that are very familiar with how to force another spirit into this scenario, start to deform the spiritual body of this particular creature. It is temporary. It is not permanent. It is something that, with a little bit of work, if I may say like that, can be solved. When I mean a little bit of work, I'm trying to be positive in what I'm saying. The spirit in himself or herself, and people like to say it, I prefer to call as a person, as I see, they need to change a little bit. They need to open possibilities to allow the process to get better. Lycanthropy quite often takes a bit of time. We can use the tools that we have on the Spiritist Center through the mediumship meetings, with assistance of benefactors, but this is something that, again, is just temporary. We return to our original format, to original shape after a period of time. And those two topics here could start with something that's called guilt, remorse. So that's why it's very important to try to overcome those situations as soon as they are presented in our lives. Munir, can you move the slide, please? Chapter 12. Vampirism with organic repercussions. I was having a hard time how to represent this topic, and something that was very strong to me is that sometimes we think when we go to a pub and go to have some happy hour somewhere, we are just there ourselves and there's nothing going on. And that's not truly the case. I'm not against who does, and everybody has the free will. But as soon as we start to drink alcohol, chances are that we are not alone. And as you can see in this image here, we had someone in a pub drinking a pint, but you can see a dark image behind him absorbing the fluids, right? Obsession can produce physical illness. Possession is an advanced stage of obsession. I just mentioned that here. I'm not going to talk about that here. There's another slide. The obsessor can directly affect the physical body. A process of obsession can, and if it's a long process, will create illness in our physical body. So it is very important to identify those scenarios earlier rather than later. Earlier, we can act faster. We can help both spirits, incarnated and discarnated spirits. And I strongly recommend, and to anyone that have the opportunity to work with that, to always remember that we are not there to help one or another. We are there to help both spirits. And sometimes it's more than two. We are there to help, to assist the group. They are part of the obsession. There is an energetic bond between the obsessor and the victim. And who creates the opportunity for that bond? We do. We create those opportunities. Illness may arise from negative mental connections or past conflicts, things that we did ourselves in the past. There are some examples: epilepsy, neurological disorder, organic dysfunctions. And I'll speak about one of them a little bit, epilepsy. Are you telling me that every single case of epilepsy, we have a spirit creating that situation? No, I'm not. But there is a good number of cases that is not just physiological. There is also a external factor playing in that equation. And there are very nice example about epilepsy in this book, and there are other books as well, that explains a bit more in depth the subject. But when we get closer to spirits, we start to share. We give and we receive. And when that happens, depending on the intensity, it may trigger some scenarios, such as epilepsy. Again, due to the time, I'm not really going into too deep into the subject. Right? It is very complicated to identify what is what, which case is which, because quite often they are one hand by hand with the other. There is a physical component, but there is also a spiritual component in the process. And we, as spiritists, we recommend never ignore the clinical aspect. Never ignore your doctors, your physicians, never. But be very positive not to ignore too the spiritual aspect of the event. After work with both, you can come to a conclusion, or you may have indications of more specifically about which case you are presenting or you are experiencing. Can you move to the next one, will you please? When Roberto was speaking about symbiosis, I said, oh dear. Spoiler alert, he's speaking about symbiosis already, and he did very well. So here is an image to show a good symbiosis. We have light spirit. We don't see a very illuminated spirit. Could be a family spirit, could be a friend spirit that have some bond with us. They try to help us. They are part of our life. Is that negative? No, it's not. We choose what kind of connections we want to have. So that is on us, right? And here, there was a sentence I got from the book. Very fine threads bound the two together from the chest to the head. They seem viscerally united, as if they were prisoners of the same thoughts, emotions, and feelings. This is a Pedro Camilo case, right? Notice that image is not bringing a very evolved spirit. They're bringing a more common spirit like we are, right? We are not that angels, like, So we can get connected to those spirits and they can get connected to us. Next one, please. Now it's a bit different. Remember that I said on the very beginning that we are surrounded and under influence of spirits 24/7. Yes. On the image a little bit more to the left, we have a good influence. We have a light, illuminated spirits coming to us, giving us good thoughts, good intuitions, protecting us from ourselves and from others. And that is the kind of bond we should and we would like to keep in our lives, right? How can we do that? Without choices, without thoughts, without actions. And that is something that we all have the power to do, depending only on us, right? But this spiritual influence that is light or momentary can also be negative. We could have a spirit that is a sick spirit, if I may call it like that, may get closer to us for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, for a couple of hours. He may go away. So that's something very, very light influence. And again, we all have this through our journey. We all get this experience through our day. If I can extend a bit more, every day in our lives, we are in contact with this influence, light influence. We have what we call obsession. And then I'm going to read the description here because I think it was very clear in what an obsession is. A persistent and harmful influence that disturbs the emotional balance and leads to harmful thoughts, discouragement, suffering, and moral disorientation. Someone that complains all day, someone that feels fear all day, someone that like to go to do things that we do not encourage with a certain frequency. There's a lot of scenarios that we would not be having the opportunity to talk here that we could be starting to go into an obsession, right? I mean, it's not that complicated to understand if we are or not under a process of obsession or starting a process of obsession. I'll give an example here. I don't like pineapple. Lately, I started to get a lot of pineapples in my thoughts, and I want to consume pineapples more often than I ever had in my life. This is an alarm. This is something that we can pay a little bit more attention. So it's important to us to realize that things will start very light. The initial process is very mild. Sometimes we do not perceive until it becomes more aggressive, right? But there are things like, I don't think like that. And something that's very important that we always try to prevent, we try to help people with suicidal thoughts. Suicidal thoughts could be only an external thought. Could be the spirit of the person himself. But could have a little push from outside too. So when you start to have some thoughts of self-mutilation, hold on, something is not right. I may need assistance. Ask for help before it becomes a more consistent problem, right? And we have on the right image, a little bit more dark, as you see, is a possession. Possession is something that we don't want to see in our lives. And definitely, even as spiritists, we don't want to witness that because it's not nice. I will describe here one true event. Yes, we still have a little bit of time. A true event that we were asked to go and give an assistance to a teenager. She was 17 or 18 years old, as far as I remember. She had been under a process that people call exorcism in one of the local churches. Did not work, and she had some marks of this process. And when we went to her place, there was something that I wish did not exist. The person was truly acting as an animal, and was not easy to handle, was not easy to help, and was not one event, one attempt to solve the problem. There was a lengthy process, and it brings a lot of sadness to those they are working with, but it also brings a lot of knowledge of how things can escalate and how can we avoid things like that. Marlene, can you move to the next one, please? Tuning, syntony. I will not speak a lot about that because of time, but basically, as I said before, we choose whom we want around us, incarnated and discarnated. We choose our day-to-day. So we have the power to create good syntony or bad syntony. And I think that we all understand what that means. So Munir, can you move to the next one, please? Yes. Chapter 14, sounded thoughts. Thoughts can be perceived as voices. Work like mental radio television system. The person may hear voices, receive thoughts, as if someone is dropping the thoughts inside your head. Can be confused with schizophrenia, hallucination. In Spiritist interpretation, it is a mental communication or influence. But the massive question mark is it schizophrenia or are you talking about something else? Is hallucination or are you talking about something else? How to identify which is which? Not easy. Not easy, and I wish I could give a straight answer. I wish I could give a formula on how to identify and how to help. We don't find that. I couldn't find that yet. Perhaps it's written somewhere, but I could not find it. But we should not ignore the possibility of psychological or physical event. That means our physical body presents characteristics that may really be only schizophrenia, only from chemical reactions, from disturbances we have physically. But we should not ignore the possibility of external thoughts, spiritual influences. And if I may suggest, I would consider everyone to consider both until you are able to ignore one of them, if that comes to place. I like to say that we must work on the Spiritist Center hand to hand with our benefactors, our spiritual friends. And a suggestion I do quite often to Spiritist Center when they are presented in cases like possible schizophrenia or any other type of disturbances, I would strongly recommend them to speak with a benefactor. A Spiritist Center can and should ask the benefactors, what is going on here? Which is the best way I can help this person? Is it a schizophrenia or is it an obsession? Is the person a medium needing to work? Is the person under any other type of influence? what would you recommend us as the best way to assist this person in need? I think we should do that more often. I think we should ask more often our benefactors to be able to help better people. Munir, can we move to the next slide, please? There's a chapter 15 that I think was very, very interesting in this book. And they make a comparison between an allergy process and the obsession mechanism process. Due to the time, I won't be able to go in depth again, but I would like you to consider the trigger on the image on the right as being an obsessor spirit. An obsessor spirit can create fears, can create physical reactions, anxiety, panic attack, and many other things. It can be originated by an external force, if you like, by a spirit that's trying to get through you, through your cracks, through your difficulties, through your mistakes. And after they get through this crack, then they start to create those examples we just spoke here, and that could be related or close to an allergic situation, if you like. Next one, Munir, please. Munir, I'm running. I'm conscious of the time. Bear with me, please. Chapter 16. Obsession with physical effects, poltergeist. Roberto already spoke about it very well. So just bear in mind that can have scenarios like that. They are real. There's a lot of registers about those phenomena in every single country. And the use of ectoplasm is something given to those scenarios. In particular, I don't go that deep into those topics myself, but it's something very interesting. And in Marlene's book, she also recommended a book to this topic. I don't remember from the top of my head now, but it is an interesting topic. All right, next one, Malik. Theory and prevention. Sorry, therapy and prevention. Therapy. How can I treat something before it happens? I would like to say that we all could have good thoughts, we all could have good actions and things like that. But reality is that sometimes we leave that to a later stage in our life. And quite often we are brought into the spirit center after we have a problem. And then it's never too late. We start to work in the therapy, right? Prevention would be good thoughts, good deeds, good activities. This become like a shield. If you perform good in your life, if you study good things, if you help people, if you are a charitable person, you're creating like a protection, a shield around you. I'm not saying you will not have problems. I'm saying that you create a barrier that will postpone and perhaps quite well make things difficult to this to happen. Regarding the therapy, on the Spirit Center, we have a few things that we always use to help people that come to us with this kind of situation. I would like to remind everyone that when someone comes to our Spirit Center, we should not say to the person, oh, you have an obsessor. You are having an obsession case. This shows to me a lack of charity, and you cannot know what the person will do with that information. I remember in our Spirit Center, a medium that was very willing to help went to a person that came to us and said, well, I can see there is a very dark spirit next to you. That was a disaster. The person was panicking, the person didn't know what to do. And imagine if that person had suicidal thoughts. That would be a recipe for a disaster. That person would leave the Spirit Center and probably would commit suicide. And we don't want that to happen. So even if the person has a situation that we can call an obsession case, if you are able to identify that. I would invite people to be careful in those identifications. I like to ask and to check with our benefactor if it really is an obsession case, because as Roberto said, we had several types of obsession cases. When the benefactor tell you, yes, it is this case, it's not this case, that will give a little bit more confidence and you know better which tool to use. But going back to the tools we have, prayer is a must. Prayer is not a religious thing. Prayer changes energy around you, can modify to an extent your energies, your cells, yourself. It's a powerful tool. Don't ignore that. The study of the gospel, or what we truly recommend is the gospel at home, is highly recommended. Is not a religious thing per se. When you do gospel at home, you are attracting good spirits, you change the vibration, you change the energy, you cleansing your home. So it is more than what people think. So if someone with obsession come to us, we recommend prayer, we recommend the study, the gospel at home. Positive thinking is a given, right? If you start having some dark thoughts, the person start to have some dark thoughts, change the thoughts straight away. Go listen to good music, open a good book, do something, do sports. Don't keep your mind in idle position, because that's a perfect recipe for them. Don't do that. Change that vibration as soon as you can. Think positive. And if you're performing charity, if you're helping someone, you don't have time to have bad thoughts when you're doing so. So charity is a process that people sometimes feel hard to do, and is not automatic. I can say by myself, needs to get acquainted, needs to create the practice. But when you do, you start to populate your mind and yourself with good things and good thoughts. If you have a situation of a truly obsession case, because sometimes people are very quick to define this obsession case, and sometimes not. If it is an obsession case, forgiveness. Don't create any kind of antagonism to this or to those spirits that are creating that scenario. There's a reason for it. You don't remember. Thankfully, you don't remember. So forgiveness is one of the tools you have to use for yourself or for them. Mental discipline. Choose what kind of thoughts you want to have. Mediumistic meetings can and will help the event. Not just the person, not just the spirit. The whole group, they are involved in this process. Because a true obsession case is not just one person, it's the whole family involved. Prevention, mental and emotional education. Next one, will you please? I recommend everybody to see The Chosen. It's a superb series about Jesus, with us. And it's free, so nobody can complain. And it's magnificent. Every opportunity I have to see, I do. And basically, the best way to help those spirits, incarnated or discarnated, involved in those processes, is true love. I understand if someone is hurting our family, we have that protection feeling, we want to protect and things like that, but treat with love. We don't know what we did. We don't know what we will do. And it's best that we don't. So treat with love, because only with love we are able to truly help those cases. Next one, will you please? That is chapter 19, the conclusion. I would like to bring something for you. CID 11. This is from the World Health Organization, the WHO. So now we're not talking about spiritism, we're talking about an organism that defines and produces a code to identify diseases. And obsession is defined on the CID 11. Form, repetitive and persistent. Thoughts, images, or impulses, urges. Nature, experienced as intrusive and unwanted. Affective components, commonly associated with anxiety, but can also include feelings of disgust, shame, or a distressing sense of incompleteness. Incompleteness. Oh dear, you understood. Resistance. Individuals typically attempt to ignore, suppress, or neutralize them by performing compulsions. We can open up another lecture here about compulsions. But obsession is real, people. Obsession is there, is widespread. You find in any creed, in any belief, in any religion, in any country. So it is there everywhere. Still poorly understood scientifically. Not many people believe. If they don't believe, they don't study, and that's a non-stop thing. In the future, it may be recognized as a cause of many mental disorders. Spiritism offers explanation, therapeutic approaches, encourages integration between science, spirituality, mental health. And eventually, as we now hear more and more universities studying the subject of spirituality, obsession, and things like that, we'll get better. I'm pretty sure we will. Next slide, Maria, please. This is my thank to you, to Marlene and to Andrea Luis, that I think that they brought to us a massive number of information. And I, in particular, I love Andrea Luis with what he brought to us, and my thank you to both of them. Thank you, Munir. Thank you, Roberto. Sorry, I was trying to run, but the time was, I would keep an eye on the watch. I said, my God, I cannot speak much.
I thank you both, and it's been wonderful. It is a very complex subject, and I think it's important to understand very well mediumship and the perispirit before we start to understand all the aspects related to obsession in all its facets and so on. But you both managed to bring some flavor on the subject. I know how hard it is, because sometimes, depending on the complexity of the subject, you can't stop halfway through it, because you will leave areas and questions without the indication of the answers, and sometimes people may even panic depending on the seriousness of the subject. So I'm very grateful to you both for trying to make something palatable of these very complex, delicate subjects.
Munir, that is something that I forgot to say. I apologize. If we truly have in our hands a case of obsession, the person is a medium. The person is a medium. If the person was a stone-like, would not feel that intensity of influence. If the person is receiving that degree of influence, the person is a medium. May don't need to develop, may don't need to even believe that, but the practice showed that to us.
Good. We haven't got much time for to thank everyone here who made comments. I want to thank especially Elsa, who is always with us, was also behind the project of these programs, yearly programs each year, about someone who gave a contribution and their legacy. So I want to thank Elsa and all the others who've been here with us. We have one question. Let me share. The question is from Spiritisme en Français. Should we consider a kind of obsession someone who is diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder and tending to exaggerate their behavior towards some daily life activities? To you both, whomever wants to answer it.
Well, I would say that the obsessive compulsive disorder, according to the CID that Guilherme just showed to us, is a obsession, let's say, a mental disorder of the person itself, and therefore it would be a kind of auto obsession, I would say, that I presented it today. But of course, uh, we can have in this case also the help, let's say, from a low order spirit, right? And in that case would be truly an obsession, like we say in spiritism. So that would what I would like to say. I don't know if Guilherme would like to add something.
I totally agree what you said, Roberto. It the OCD is organic, but can be one of the triggers that allows the spirits to come closer and make things worse, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So before we go, I'll make some announcements here. Just remove this one and add our announcements. So next month, that is the 7th of June, first Sunday of June, we will have here with us our friend Alexandre Caldini. He'll be talking about the book The Lighthouse of Our Lives. And so same time, please, um, you know, save the date, be here with us. And our dear friend Caldini has been with us over these years, giving his contribution. And, he's a very good lecturer as well. So I invite you all to be here with us next month, first Sunday of the month. We also have the Mediums book, an online study every Saturday, 10:30 a.m. London time. It is coordinated by our dear guest speaker, Guilherme Dias, Charles Kempf, and myself. So it's open to everyone. You have the QR code to join, or if you want, you have here the ID and passcode to join us. Most welcome to join us in this study. And there is an online group study about the book Genesis every Wednesday lunchtime. You are also invited to join us, open to everyone. You have the ID and passcode here. And Spiritist Society of London, they have their studies on Tuesdays. It's a study online as well, 7 p.m. London time. You have the meeting ID and the passcode here. They are currently studying the book Heaven and Hell and also the Gospel According to Spiritism. I would like to invite you to Spiritual Light, this program every Wednesday. It's at 9 p.m. London time, so you also can check here the time of the part of the world where you are. And this coming Wednesday, we will have here with us. Oh, I'm sorry. Talking about caring. Sorry, caring for the soul, how to navigate difficult emotions. So let me just. Let's just remove here. Our guest speaker is Edir Pasha. He's been also here with us. He's a specialist in suicide prevention, and it would be nice to hear what he has to say about difficult emotions. We want to thank Kardec Radio for allowing us to have all the support and allowing us to use the studio to bring to you these programs. And Kardec Radio is our partner in this enterprise. So we were very grateful to them. And that's all we had as announcements. So, your final words before we go, Roberto?
Okay. So just asking the next person here, next question here, I would say that when there is the influence of a low order spirit, yes, the person with the OCD would be a medium. Well, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to participate. With you and Guilherme. Guilherme knows a lot about leadership and obsession also, right, Guilherme? And not only theoretical, but the practical mainly. And then I would like to thank you very much.
Thank you, Roberto.
Well,
Guilherme.
I would like to thank you the opportunity of being here. Thanks for the opportunity, Roberto, to share that stage with you. That was very good. I felt like the pressure. Oh my God, I need to be Roberto. He knows, and I feel like that. But that was very nice. Thank you for the opportunity, Roberto. Thank you for the opportunity, Munir, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Guilherme. And it's been very nice, and I think it is a very good contribution. And now it will stay there on YouTube and Facebook, so those who missed it and are interested in the topic. And regarding the question we've had, especially from Spiritisme en Français, regarding mediumship and all these organic problems, we could say, yeah, we should remember that whenever we have an organic problem, that may be emphasized by spiritual interference, especially when we are medium. So sometimes it's just a problem of, organic problem. But spirits, as Guilherme mentioned, they take every opportunity to, interfere with our lives when they can. So it is important to, keep a positive thought and try to follow the recipe to have a sound spiritual life. So thank you all very much for being here with us, and hope to see you approximately in a month's time on the 7th of June for another presentation about yet another book by Dr. Marlene Nobre. So see you all in a month's time. Thank you so much. Thank you, Roberto and Guilherme. Bye-bye for now.